So hello everyone. Thank you for taking time to attend this information session. Many of you have purchased fish fingerlings from Sham, so most of you know him. I mean, how can you talk fish in Kodagu and not know Patara Sham, right? He has been encouraging farmers in Kodagu to utilize their irrigation tanks for more than just irrigation by growing fish, whether it's for recreational purposes or commercial purposes. He's been doing it for a few years now. So three more of us have joined Sham in Aquaventures to grow inland fisheries in Kodagu. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I think we have quite a few young people as well. Fisheries was a big deal in Kodagu years ago. We have a lot of fisheries departments and things like that, government entities in Kodagu related to fish. But it's been gone for a while. Now with the current push by the current government to triple inland fisheries in India, we see the opportunity once again to become leaders of inland fisheries in Karnataka, both as a district and as a community. We already have the resources. We just have to use them in a more disciplined way. And what better to start this off with an expert like Sham. He'll walk you through the full cycle of growing fish from seedling to harvest. We'll let him share his expertise for about 20 minutes. And then we'll open up the mic for about 10 minutes for questions.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining today. It's first of probably a lot of a series of Zoom meetings that we can have with farmers to try and impart as much knowledge, as much information on fish farming and its possibilities, potentials in Cook as possible. I'll straight away start sharing the presentation. Okay. So why this topic today? It really stems from basic fact of us being farmers, or planters, agriculturists. Now, it all starts with your estate. What do you do in your estate practice? You always have a major step called irrigation. Now, to fulfill that irrigation process, we all have different plans. Some of us tap into natural resources like rivers and streams. And most of us, 80–90% of us, have to make water resources to irrigate. And in the bargain, we end up constructing ponds. The ponds can vary, and at least as of now, it is very important to have a pond, because I think everybody is, most of us are into irrigation and for blossom and backing. If we have realized the potential, we have realized the importance of irrigation. So we all have designed and invested in irrigation ponds. So these investments have not been light. They have been very, very huge. They have been very expensive. A lot of capital has gone into creating these water bodies. Some of us have done 100 by 100, some of us have done 200 by 100, some of us have an acre pond, some of us have 2 acres pond, and most of them have set their ponds in areas which are probably not very cultivable, like paddy fields or korjis and water wetland areas, where ideally you wouldn't have any kind of a resource or planting going on. Most of us also have thought that paddy has become a little non-viable, so we've converted them into irrigation ponds and converted most of the other areas into coffee estates. So these irrigation ponds, the capital investment has always come from the estate. So what we think and what we've realized is the number of ponds that are there in Cook, number of water bodies that are there in Cook are really huge. They're close to about 15 lakh hectares of water bodies in Cook, and all these water bodies are prime areas where fish can grow. Hence, we think you can utilize your resource, utilize the land that you have, make best use of your resource, and get some returns from them. Now, this return is not in the scale of commercial fish farming that they do in Andhra or other places in terms of returns, but nevertheless, these returns are good to offset some of your estate expenses. I'll be showing a small slide on the kind of investment that you can expect from a small pond. But these, even though they don't sound in lakhs and lakhs, but you can take care of some of your estate operation expenses like irrigation or a round of manuring or an extra round of fertilizer or foliar spray, something like that can come from this income. So the focus on the pond has to be a little more by the planter. Having this background, I'll get into the next section where we're talking about the type of fish that most of us grow. We all know the basic carps. Most of us grow carps in our pond because they are easily available, they're cheap, they are without any headache. You just have to leave them and forget about it. That kind of a practice. So in the carps, the major ones are katla, rohu, and grass carp and common carp. We have been giving out a lot of fingerlings of katla, rohu, and grass carp and not the common carps because most of our ponds are again very deep. These fish occupy different strata of the pond. The katla is on the surface, rohu is a columnar feeder in the middle, and grass carp keeps the pond clean by eating the grass, and it's generally on the sides. Common carp is also a good fish, but it's a bottom growing fish, and because we have deeper ponds, the output from the common carp is not too great. That's one of the disadvantages. The second disadvantage why I discourage common carp is it can damage a lot your bund quite often. In the sense, it can the bund korpan, so it can cause a lot of damage to the bund. That's the reason I always advise farmers to go for these three varieties: katla, rohu, and grass carp. Now, besides carp, there are other commercially important viable species that are commercially being grown. That includes the Nile tilapia. The next one is the marl, baramina, or aimina that we call it. Then there is another variety of common carp called amur carp. It's been imported and developed and has gained a lot of acceptance in the from the consumer point of view and also farming point of view. They grow very fast. And also on a short cycle, if you look at it, the pangasius is also a good one, what we normally call as basa. If you go to a restaurant and ask for fish fillet or fish fry or fish fingers in a wedding, the fish fingers you get is from this particular fish, from basa. So these are also commercially very important, has huge potential in terms of farming and revenues. To show you a little semi-intensive carp culture setup, what can happen if you think of farming in a little semi-intensive way. This is what the figures will look like. If you have a normal pond of say 100 by 100, you will stock the pond with a stocking density of 2000 fingerlings. They will cost you so much, and then there includes a small set of works that you can do. That's why we call it semi-intensive. If you don't do any of this, it becomes extensive.
Want to know about fish farming? Shyam is doing.
Hello?
No, I think somebody put yourself on mute if you are going to have a conversation, please. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we call the semi-intensive, where you're doing a little more work in terms of feeding the fish, in terms of manuring, and in terms of management. If you don't do any of these things, then it becomes extensive, where you prepare the pond, you leave your fingerlings, and then you just let the fish survive on natural food. If you do a little management practice, then your cost can come up to about $40,000 for the cycle. The potential of fish production from that particular pond is about 1,200 kgs. Now in Coorg, the problem with Coorg is our waters are slightly cold. We are in a hilly area, so the water temperature can drop to about 22 to 24 degrees. And fish being a cold-blooded animal, the temperature of water decides its growth rate. So we say you have to look at a 2-year cycle of harvest. So if you leave your fish this year, you can only harvest it after 2 years. Doesn't mean you have to stop. You have to stock once in 2 years. You can do a few management practices, which I'll be explaining later, to have an annual cycle. If you look at a revenue point of view, then you can get a farmyard price or farm gate price of at least 100 rupees nowadays. That amounts to about 1.2 lakhs. So the profit from such a venture can be about 80,000. That's about 200% more than your investment. This is a semi-intensive, a modular figure. There can be variations here and there. Now, as far as fish farming is concerned, I'm going to talk to you about on these 5 points. The first and most important point is the pond preparation. Now, what is pond preparation? We normally none of us don't pay much attention to pond preparation. The reason is we just have the pond, we simply think it's there. But if you take a few management steps, like clearing the bund, cutting all the overhead branches and twigs so that sufficient sunlight can get into the pond, clear the pond of aquatic weeds, get rid of all of them so that your water volume is higher. Then you make sure your pond is free of aquatic insects and other weed fishes, we call it, porcamine and other fishes which are going to occupy space, feed on the feed that you're going to give, and generally bring down your productivity. If you can focus on all these points, then your success of farming is much better. It's the same like what you do in your plantation. Before you plant, you take care of so many things. You clear the weeds, you dig a pit, you put some fertilizer, and nurture it. So the same way, the pond needs slight work in preparation. That's the first step. Next step is, after you've done some work on preparing the pond, you have to fertilize the pond. Now, why fertilizing? Because all the fish that you are going to release, the carps, are all plankton feeders. And what are planktons? Planktons are small microscopic organisms or very small organisms that grow in water bodies, which are natural food for this fish. How can you do this? Once you've got the pond clean and ready, you've got rid of all your things. First thing you do is you apply agriculture lime, not hydrated lime, agriculture lime. Agriculture lime is applied for 100 by 100 pond. I would advise one bag, that is 50 kilos of agriculture lime. You just broadcast it. What it does is it balances the pH. It neutralizes some unwanted small weed insects, and it gets the condition ready, pond ready, and the pH is balanced. Once that is done, after a week of doing that, you apply fertilizer. The fertilizers that you can apply are cow dung, along with organic manure like cow dung or poultry manure, along with some inorganic manure like muriate of potash or DAP, SSP, and urea. You can do urea and SSP combination, like you take a bag of a basket of cow dung, you put about 150, 200 grams of urea, about 500 grams of SSP, you let it rest overnight. Next morning, you mix it with water and disperse it on the pond. You do this after you have applied some cow dung the previous day. Now, what this application of organic and inorganic combination does is it kickstarts that whole plankton cycle. Phytoplankton starts getting produced, and in turn, and after that, zooplankton is produced. And in a week's time, you have a lot of small microscopic insects in your pond, which are natural food for the fish. This is a highly critical aspect of your fish farming that we advise to all our farmers before we start giving them fingerlings is, you please apply cow dung. Please apply cow dung. If they ask us a little more detail, we give them a little more detail of liming, pond preparation, and things like that. But application of cow dung at least is a basic requirement. Now, once you've done that and your pond has food in it, that you go to the next step, second stage of stocking of fingerlings. So you have to have a slight schedule planned. Once you know when you're going to get your fingerlings, you do the back work of pond preparation. Fingerlings also, stocking of fingerlings is a crucial step. Earlier, what was available to all our farmers was something called fry. Fry is just about 1 centimeter to 2 centimeter, 1.5 centimeter long fish. That is about 3 to 4 weeks old. So those are highly susceptible to insect attack. They're very delicate. There's changes in environment, water conditions, all those things. So as soon as you release them, you might get them in cheap or large quantities in packets, but the survival rates are really, really poor. That's why we supply fingerlings. That is about a finger length, about 2 inches long. The success of your fish farming is much better when you stock fingerlings, and the quantity of fingerlings you need to stock is also a little less. Stocking of fingerlings, the quantity is dependent on the size of your pond. For a 100 by 100 pond, we advise about 2000 fingerlings. And that's why when we talk, we always ask you about what is the size of your pond, so that you don't overstock or you don't understock. Understocking will lead to loss of production, lesser production. Overstocking can also lead to loss of production, in the sense that all the fish will be competing with each other for space, food, oxygen, and they will not grow. So deciding on the number of fingerlings that you have to stock is also crucial. And in this, when you know the number, you divide them into different species, like 35% katla, 35% rohu, and about 20% and 30% to grass carp. This, and that way you can take care of the fish in different stratas. So fingerlings, once you've got, there are a few steps that you have to be careful and follow before you release the fingerlings. Once you get the fingerlings, you get them in oxygen packets. Those packets have to be kept in the water for at least 10 to 15 minutes. The reason is the fish, when they're transported, they are stressed, and the temperature also of the water is slightly higher. So when you leave them in a pond, the temperature of the water in the pond and the temperature of water in your packet can be different, and that can lead to death of your fingerlings. These are all very crucial. Reason is, in a land, like an animal, when you're doing animal husbandry, everything is visible. You can see them. You can see your cows. You can see your pigs. You can see your poultry. But fish is something which you cannot see. You can assume that they are there, that they are eating, that they're growing. But really, it is not possible for you to get a good grip on how many fish may be surviving. So you have to take the good management practices in terms of fingerling stocking. So you balance the temperature of your water, of your packet and the water, 10 minutes, and then you slightly open it slowly. Take some water from your pond into the packet, let it mix gently, and then you release your fingerlings into the pond. This is a crucial step in stocking of fingerlings. Then what it does, as soon as the fish are released, they would have been starved in the packet. Before transportation, none of the fish are being fed, so they will be starving. That's why availability of food in your pond is an extremely crucial step. Once you release the fish into your pond, they have to have access to the food. They have to start feeding, and that determines survival of the fingerlings that you've stocked. You may stock 10,000, you can stock 5,000, but if there is no food in your pond, you will not even get 100 fish out of it. And I think that has been the basic problem that most of us farmers have faced in Coorg. I have released 1,000 fingerlings. I have released 5,000. I have brought 10,000 last year, but I don't have anything. I only have about 100 fish. The factors that are affecting it is availability of food, the condition of the pond, of the packet, of the fingerling when you release them, presence of aquatic insects, predators like birds, snakes, frogs, insects. See, insects are also a very crucial element that everybody discounts. I'm sorry, I missed a step in the pond preparation stage. What you need to do 24 hours before you release your fingerlings is, you have to just spill some diesel onto your pond. What does the diesel do? It forms a small thin layer on the surface of your pond. And all the insects are air breathing. And when they want to come up to breathe, the diesel kind of clogs their gills or breathing apparatus, and most of the insects die. So 24 hours before you release your fingerlings, if you just spill some diesel on your, so if you take, say if you have 100 by 100 pond, you'll need about half a liter of diesel or 1 liter of diesel, that's all. And it evaporates. There's no side effect. There's no problem. In the next day, the pond is clean, fresh, nice, no problem. When you release your fingerlings, they don't get affected by the presence of this oil in the surface. So the diesel evaporates and it is fine. So once you get rid of the insect, again, survival of your fingerlings are much better. So step 2 is also crucial. Once you've done that, then the next stage comes to feeding. This is something a matter of choice of the farmer, or if you want to do it extensive, intensive, or semi-intensive. In extensive, you do the manuring stage and you do periodic manuring. Now, how do you do periodic manuring? You take a barrel, you mix some groundnut oil cake in it, you mix some urea, a single superphosphate, you mix some cow dung, you let it rest overnight, and the next day you just disperse it to the pond. You do it every month. Along with this, you apply a little bit of cow dung. What it does, it provides enough material for the plankton to keep on growing, keep on multiplying, keep on growing. And the fish has a endless supply of food after that. And then they keep feeding, they keep growing, they keep feeding, they keep growing. You can suspend this particular step in the winter season. That is when the temperatures are low, when there is a lot of cloud cover. These are also the days that you should not be doing this. Because as the temperature drops down the pond, the fish do not grow. Anything below 22 degrees, the fish will not grow, or the growth rate really slows down. So you can avoid those steps. And at that time, you can, anyway, we are all busy with coffee picking at that time. So you do not do much. And as soon as we reach summer, you again start the cycle of fertilizing and feeding and keeping the fish growing up. And because as the temperature grows, the fish also can grow faster. Okay. So feeding is also another step that most of us can decide on how to do it. If you think you have the capital to spend on fish feed, commercial fish feed is available. It can act as a supplemental feed because it is very expensive. You have to continue this process of fertilizing your pond, and you can supplement it by adding some commercial pellets, which will increase the fish growth a couple of notches. And again, I'd say winter times are not the times you should be feeding them too much. So you keep them starving at that time. And as soon as you reach summer, when the temperatures go up, when the fish are hungry, that stage of stunting is also happening, then you can go for a high protein feed, and you can boost the size of your fish in a shorter time. Feeding after you've taken care of that stage of feeding, we come to harvesting. So harvesting again depends on the stage of your pond. Most of us decide on the harvesting depending on the water level in your pond, and a couple of factors that you need to consider: water level of your pond, demand for fish, and the price that somebody can offer you, and the size of your fish or the quantity of fish that you can harvest. These carps are usually grown at a cycle of 2 years, what I mentioned earlier. So what do? Do you wait for 2 years? No. So after the first year, at the end of your irrigation and when the water levels are low, some of the fish would have grown to bigger sizes. They're called shooters. They are advanced fingerlings. They have a tendency to grow faster. So you can use some dragging apparatus or gill netting or selective harvesting to remove these big fish. That big fish is market size is about 1 to 1.5 kilos. So once you've removed them, the other fish, which are say about 400 grams, 800 grams, 500 grams, you give them a chance to grow faster. So that will take the next year. And in this second year, you release half the amount of fingerlings that you released the first year. So you keep that cycle going on. So every year after the second year, you should be getting a good stock of fish out of your pond. So after the second year, you will always have to get a good. So the big ones go out, the small ones get a chance to grow big. Then you release some fingerlings, they get a chance to come to that 500 grams in the first year, and so on. You continue that cycle after that first year. And again, harvesting again depends on the price you can get. You should look at a price of at least 100 rupees a kilo. If you are venturing into select the other options like fast growing fish like tilapia or marils or pangasius, then you can harvest every year. We are kind of setting up a market for harvesting and procuring the fish from all the farmers at a better price. The other fish like amur carp also grows faster. So in the harvesting, there's one crucial step that everybody kind of gets confused or misses it. We do not realize the quantity of fish in our ponds, and we go about irrigation. And when the irrigation cycle is over and the water level drops down, suddenly you see a lot of fish, and you realize that, oh, I have so many fish in my pond. The water level is low. They have all come up to breathe. They are finding it difficult to breathe. They have no oxygen deficiency, and you are in a panic state. You do not want to lose the fish. You want to harvest them. You get into a panic sale mode. Now, I advise all of you to kind of avoid that. Be a little prepared in advance. As soon as you get into that crucial level of 4 feet of water, you should think of either harvesting or stopping irrigation or some kind of an alternative thing, or refilling the pond or keeping it going on. If you do not want to harvest, you have to refill or stop it at 4 feet water level. Or if you want to harvest, then you can bring down the water level. Prepare your market. Advance notice, give advance notice to a lot of customers around your estates. Build up a market for the kind of fish that you have, and then sell. Just harvest the amount of fish that you can sell, and leave the others there only. They will continue growing. There's no harm. They will survive. They will continue growing, and you can get a better harvest than again the next time. It's not like you leave the poor fish and they will stop growing. No. The next year when you go back to the same pond, they will be about 2 kgs. So you can continue growing the fish. So harvesting is very important. You have to time it well. You have to plan it in advance, and you have to have the pre-market quantities decided. After harvesting, the last part I would like to touch on is record keeping. Why record keeping? Because when you are in a process of commercial farming or substantial subsidiary farming, it's very important to know how much you've spent, what might be your returns, what you can gain from something like this. So there are few. It's very simple. You can just keep them into input and input purchased, input used, and output. That's it. So input purchased would be something like fingerlings, manure, cow dung, and input used can be something like labor. If you bought any nets, then those nets, and you keep a track of all the investments that you've made into the pond. We do not consider construction of the pond in this record, because that is part of your capital investment to your estate. It's not, unless you're digging a pond for fish culture, you will not be able to you should not be able to look at the ponds, the amount, the capital investment from your pond in terms of returns from your fish. So once you've categorized and you've labeled them well, then you can match your output or harvest. And crucial part is there are a lot of takeaway lessons from doing this. You'll realize how much output you're getting, what are the mistakes you've made in terms of, maybe you'll realize if I had fed them better, they would have grown faster, or maybe you would have realized that I should have stocked a little more or stocked a little less. Or you would have realized that I have stocked 10,000 fish, but I'm only getting about 100 kilos. Where are the rest? 100 kilos means, if you're talking about 1 kilo fish, that's just 100 fish. That's like 90% mortalities, which is really not acceptable in terms of any kind of farming. So these are few takeaways that you can get from record keeping, just to rectify your mistake for the next year. So I think I've touched on more. If there are any questions, I'd like to take them. Most of us are fish farmers. You've done some kind of a fish farming over the past many years, I think. So if there are any queries that you have for us, then I think we'd be more than happy to answer them.
Yeah, I'll put up a slide where you see the phone number. And then you can give us a call. You can send us a message. You can send us a message to this number down here. Mobile number, take a picture of it, keep it with you, and you can follow us on Aquaventures 9 on Instagram if you're one of those people who follows who's on Instagram. Any questions, please do WhatsApp us at this number here.
See, this cow dung
Yes,
should be fresh or dried. What is it?
both are fine.
Both are.
There are two things. One, as soon as you put your dry cow dung in your water, anyway, it will dissolve. Compost is also fine, but the wet cow dung is much effective in the sense it kickstarts that whole plankton cycle faster because the nitrogen is available at a faster rate in the water. So, but again, if you're doing it in a big pond, wet is fine. If you're doing in a small pond for, say, ornamental fish or something which is a little more valuable, smaller scale, then dry cow dung is a better option, because wet cow dung can cause some disease. Can give out some disease causing. But in a large pond, we just don't mind this. Wet cow dung is fine.
So, a large, 100 by 100 is quite a large pond.
Correct.
So that only takes 2,000 fishlings, is it?
That's the ideal stocking density for carps. But if you're doing something like tilapia, you can double the number. You can go to 4,000 fingerlings for tilapia.
And,
they are
something
faster
like,
growing.
okay.
Tilapia, pangasius, amur carp, marl. Marl, you can do about 10,000 numbers in that fish, because marls are all air breathing. They can survive in dense populations, but they are very sensitive. They need management. They need feeding and they need things like that. They're a little expensive to grow, but they are high return, high value crops.
Marls, okay.
Marls, yeah. But
So
I mean,
Abhishek?
I had one question.
yes.
What is the quantity of cow dung required for 100 by 100 pond?
For a 100 pond, you can have about 5 baskets of cow dung.
5 baskets is sufficient for pond preparation, right?
Yes, for pond preparation.
And for monthly, this thing add-on?
For monthly add-on, it depends on the weather. It depends on your pond color, and it depends on the kind of available plankton in your pond. If the water should never be dark green or black.
Okay.
If it is dark green or black, that means there is algae, pachi, and it can turn filamentous. And once the filamentous algae starts growing in your pond, then the fish will not survive, because their gills will get clogged. They won't be able to swim around. There's no food available. There's very less oxygen in your pond. These are the factors. So you have your ideal pond water color is a golden brown to
Golden,
like a green.
Light green.
So you have to look at your pond color, look at a bright sunny day, and then apply your fertilizer. Because the whole cycle of plankton buildup is an oxygen consuming cycle. So the dissolved oxygen level in your pond also will drop. So you have to be very careful with that.
Okay. And if cow dung is not available, any other
poultry manure is
option?
fine. Poultry manure is fine.
Poultry, okay. Okay.
So if both are not available, then you do this magic mix. You get 1 basket of cow dung from somewhere.
Okay.
You have to mix it with inorganic fertilizers like single superphosphate, urea, and groundnut oil cake, kadle hindi.
Kadle hindi, yeah.
Kadle hindi. You mix them, you leave them overnight, and then you disperse them in a pond at a frequent level. Say once in 15 days, you do this.
Okay. And
that
one
will
more
again
question.
That will again keep your plankton level very high.
Yeah. Okay. And one more question.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Abhishek.
In pond preparation, you told we have to apply lime, right?
Yes. Yes.
Will it affect the leftover fish after harvesting?
No. You are doing agriculture lime.
Yeah. Okay.
You're not like dolomite.
You
are not going to be doing shell lime or hydrated lime, which are very, very caustic. The reason is when you apply agriculture lime, it really is a very low quantity of calcium in that available calcium. So the water pH does not drastically change. It does a very slow change. It has to take its time to change the pH, to rectify the pH. The time you have to give some time. That's why we say you apply lime, wait for a week, and then you apply your cow dung.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you
Thank
have fish in your pond and you have a lot of algae and the water quality is really bad, you
Okay.
first apply lime.
Okay.
What it also does at that time is it kind of settles the water. The water becomes a little cleaner, clearer. All the sediment, suspended particles settle down into your pond. Then you restart the cycle of fertilizer.